Welcome to In the Trenches, defending the future of youth tackle football. Here's your host, Jeff Gorin.
Welcome into another episode of In the Trenches. I am Jeff Goringe with the Ute Conference in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we have had an amazing amount of really cool guests. And today is absolutely no different. We're going to start out today. Marcus, do you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely.
He's a returner. He's been on before.
He has, and he's been in our office a couple times. So his name is Tyler Johnson. He is a partnership manager for the Mountain region at the Positive Coaching Alliance. He brings a deep football background to his role, enriching his mentorship of athletes and coaches with the firsthand understanding of the sport of football. His collegiate athletics experience, highlighted by leadership as a team captain, aligns with his commitment to fostering a culture of positive development and leadership in sports. Please welcome Tyler Johnson.
Thank you for having me.
Tyler, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited to be here back on the podcast with you.
Well, awesome. We are grateful to have you. You know, you've traversed the land of youth football, high school football, college football, NFL. You've been involved in various phases, and we wanted to pick your brain a little bit today about, you know, how football has impacted your life, not only from a positive coaching side, where what you're doing now, but how has football impacted your life?
Whew. Yeah, I think, when you ask that question, I think, it also is one of those things is if you ask, what's one of the biggest things that's impacted my life throughout my life? Yeah, it would be football. I grew up playing, sampling all different kinds of sports. I think I figured out that I think football was actually about the sixth or seventh sport that I tried in about second or third grade. And actually, I really loved basketball more as a kid. Didn't get blessed with a whole lot of height past 5'10", and had some good speed, and found more of a home and comfort in football. But I think, one of the big things it taught me early was to set goals and to go after them. Whether it was to, earn this position on a team or get that or earn that. It really gave me something to put ahead and work towards, and just kind of setting that goal. And then when you start to achieve those and look back at the work you did to make that, you're able to, take the clues that success gave you and hopefully repeat some of those things when you strive towards the next goal. But that's really the biggest early lesson I think the game taught me, was to keep kind of having something to go after, even in the off season and as you head into the season. Putting things that are challenges for you out ahead of you and figuring out a way how to go accomplish them, for yourself and with your teammates.
So one of the things, that we look at, or we've said a lot, is football is one of those sports where you've got to make a decision, because you're going to have adversity. You are going to get knocked on the ground. What are you going to do with it? So what is the trials part of this? You talked about setting goals, but did you achieve all your goals? And then how did you bounce back from having the adversity or not achieving that goal?
Yeah, great question. I think, definitely had, a goal and aspirations of playing at the NFL level. One of the, adverse things I had to go through was after redshirting a year in college football, my freshman year, starting to mix in a little bit in the secondary and playing on all the special teams. I had a back injury and was told by two doctors that I was done playing football at 19. And being that I was just kind of getting on the field and fresh to having a college scholarship, it was crushing. And then I was able to have a third assessment that, allowed me to rest, rehab, and not deal with those first two doctors had advised in getting out of the game, and was able to build my body back, come back, be a starter, be a captain. But that injury, was the first time I think I had kind of football, taken away from me from a long period of time. And it also kind of, while physically challenged me and put some limitations in the future for me, I was able to maximize what I thought I could do with the situation I had. And so I was proud of that. The condition I had in my back, you do not get drafted a whole lot with having a spondylolisthesis in your third lumbar. Unless I ran maybe a 4.2, they would take a chance, but I wasn't quite that fast. So that adversity, I think too, I learned what's important to me in the game, and then also to really develop relationships, because I spent more time in the training room. I spent more time trying to mentor up the athlete behind me and learn from the DBs ahead of me. So there's a blessing, and I think what often looks like adversity is usually an opportunity, and I think that's one of the big lessons that football taught me too, is that in those adverse situations, what's the opportunity for you? Because if you don't look for that, you won't find it.
So in today's age, you mentioned starting at a very young age. How old were you?
I started playing football, about third grade.
Third grade. So, but in today's world, we got to we got to protect everybody. We got to keep everybody safe. We can't allow kids to play football and get tackled, which
Yeah,
I would argue there's a lot more wrestling to the ground than tackling to the ground at that age group.
sure.
However, do you think the participation in youth football at those levels is a hindrance or puts undue stress on a child's life because he was tackled?
I, I do. I think there's, obviously any sport has risks, and those risks vary. The risks that are in football are, amplified often by wrong audiences and sometimes to the detriment of the game. I think the big things that I've always kind of looked at on, especially from developing your children, and especially if I've had that conversation where a parent asks me if their kid should play football, when they should play football, I usually ask them, like, well, when did you start having them ride a bike? Are you not teaching them to ride a bike? And they'll usually be a little confused, but the data is, you're more likely to get a concussion riding a bike. And you're also more likely to get a concussion riding in the car with your adult parent. And so there's a lot of risks in life. And so I always think, having parents and people understand what those are so we can be safe and minimize it. But in any sport, any car ride, or any attempt to teach a kid how to ride a bike, you're not going to be able to eliminate all the risk. And part of that risk is what makes football and riding a bike fun.
What's funny is when they're little tiny, they're 10 months old, they're 11 months old, and they're pulling themselves up. We're cheering. And then they fall down, hit the ground. And then we're encouraging, get back up, get back up.
You can do
But we don't see that in organized sports. So if we've minimized the risks and we do a really good job with training up our coaches, what are the lessons that can be learned? What values can you take away from starting playing football at this age?
Yeah, I think, you know, being biased towards the game, I think the unison, the unity, the synchrony that the game requires, and just the volume of people and the way they have to work together on special teams in a variety of ways. The game just represents to me a lot of life. I think the analogies run abundant with the game of football, but I think that's one of the ones is, how do you work together and work with this person and that person, and, also challenge them and push them. But I think that game of life and teammates, and um, the volume of teammates you have, I think one of the best things that football taught me was to be accountable. And, when you have great teammates around you, when you fail to be accountable to yourself, they don't let that slide. That's not what great teammates do. And I was blessed to have great teammates that don't let that stuff slide, and it elevates your own accountability to yourself, right? And so I think having great teammates, and I hear that a lot from coaches. How do we make kids accountable? And it's like your teammates are going to have the biggest role in helping your team become an accountable team. And how do we set the tone for that? So I just, still, and then I think what comes off those teammate lessons is, as you get older like me and a few gray hairs, is the stories and the friendships that still exist from going through challenges and joys and adversity that the game provides, 2 decades ago.
But it's even more than that, and it may be more than that. I
Mm,
shouldn't say it is, but it. I had an administrator tell me once that the start of the school year was football,
mm,
and that football, however football went, that determined the entire school year.
mm.
So that's an amazing statement of importance because of the cohesiveness it not only builds in the school, but the cohesiveness that it builds in the community.
Yeah.
Did you experience any of that?
Yeah, I think when high school football is done right, it just like that word you said, community. You bring together other entities of your school, the band, the cheer, the dance, all these things, other kids that are performers to do the national anthem, the halftime show, and you can use football to amplify so many great things that kids are doing around that ecosystem. And it's still the thing as I look around and visit campuses in the Rocky Mountain region, and luckily to go to a lot of high schools, it is still one of the things that attracts the most people to go to a game on Friday night. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think with the girls' side of the game and flag football continuing to grow, uh, that is going to be part of that. Hopefully, I think part of that Friday community is the girls are going to play a little bit of a role on Friday night lights too. And so I think as you guys know, with the girls in your league, um, that's already kind of on the tee on the horizon. So I think growing the game is a huge piece. And now we've got flag football going into the Olympics. Um, there's a lot of exciting things I think with football, and to try to distort or minimize the momentum of the game is kind of delusionary.
Well, you brought up flag. We're actually going to take a 2-year hiatus from our girls league.
Okay.
And the reason we're going to take a 2-year hiatus is the existing girls tackle football league that's been here for 8 years in the valley wants to continue for 2 more years, 2 more seasons. Well, we took a step back, we looked at the safety of it. We don't feel like it's responsible to have girls playing in 2 tackle football seasons,
Sure.
play in the spring and then play in the fall. So our goal is to unify that side of it, but we're going to take a 2-year hiatus. They're going to run this year and they're going to run next year, and then we'll run the following fall.
Yeah.
But with the sevens, with the flag, with that, physical activity that never hurt a kid. In fact, I could probably use a little more physical activity in my life. But, tell me about what that did for you getting ready to play, what that did for your mental health. Because people don't associate physical activity with mental health, but I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think I'll just, my own personal experience, and I think an experience I've shared with, many former athletes, and football players was, you know, sh- shortly after my playing career, I kind of, had an identity crisis of who I was without the game, because the game had always been such a part of my life, and always setting those goals and things ahead of me. Um, One of the things, I learned about myself as I kind of went through that experience is I got away from the daily workouts that football made me do. And part of, getting back in my right mindset at that time, a few years from the game, was when I started running and lifting weights again. A lot of the things that I found, as mental hurdles were dissipated, and it gave me that outlet. And I'm really glad I took a little bit of hiatus after my body took a beating, but have really for the last 15 years tried to be a healthy role model for the kids that I'm in front of and the coaches that I get to work with. Um, to try to create that life skill, and I think learning how to work out, and it's so many great other stories of former football players that get into coaching, weightlifting, and so many other indirect ways that they're helping athletics. For me, and I was blessed to have an amazing strength coach in college that, one, was amazing, two, to recover from help me with that back injury and to become a college athlete again. was a huge blessing. And so there's things I still do to this day that I learned through my college workouts.
It's amazing because I look at youth sports, high school sports. I mean, this is a gateway to life. This is you're going to have adversity. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to have wins. You're going to have huge celebrations. It so just runs parallel with our lives. Because we're going to have all of that as well. One of the things in being a gateway to life, we recognize that kids, both male and female, probably the chances of making it to the league are not always great. I mean, here you are, you're 5'10", and you were fast. I was 5'8" and was clocked with a sundial. We weren't going to make it, but look what football is, how much of a part of our life it is, even today, right now. So one of the things that we try to do or I try to do, is give back to the kids. It's not about the parents, it's about the kids.
Yeah.
The parents, they've all got opinions, but if we can make the experience better for the kids, that's what we're trying to do. In your football career, basketball, baseball, whatever sports you played, tell me about the impact coaches had on your life.
The one that always kind of comes up in a story that I seem to tell a lot was the sophomore basketball coach at my high school. And the funny thing I always tell the story is I didn't play for him. I didn't get to play basketball my sophomore year. At the end of that football season, I had broke some bones in my foot. And so I was a B team freshman basketball player trying to break onto the A team in my high school. And, I was excited to play for this coach. He was a former Division I player. I think he appreciated some of the effort and the things that I brought to the team differently than another coach. And he valued those. And so I was really excited to kind of play basketball. Like I said, it was one of my sports I liked, but it wasn't probably my natural abilities. And so that was, adversity, opportunity, and that broken cast, for months. That was when I fell in love with lifting weights. And I couldn't do a lot as being a kind of a gym rat, being in a cast. I started to lay down and bench press. And I remember our weight room was upstairs by the hot wrestling room. It'd be like 100 degrees lifting weights in there. And I'd come down, have to get a drink from the water fountain. We didn't have like all our bottles that we carried back, our water bottles. So we'd have to walk down the stairs to get a drink of water, go back up.
You didn't have your Stanley?
No, we had that or the hose hookup, right? And so when I would go downstairs from the weight room, all my buddies and friends would be playing basketball. And I'd look in the window and, peeking on them, getting to kind of be together with some of those guys I missed and playing basketball. And he would occasionally kind of catch me peeking in that window. And I remember the big thing that he changed in me was that even a lot of coaches that coached me, he was the first one to come up and kind of tell me he believed in me. And I remember him coming to the water fountain one time, and he just told me to keep working the way I work, and that things will work out well for you. And he just told me really to not give up on the throttle that I put forward. And he was like, I wish I had the opportunity to coach you, but I believe you're going to be a great athlete. And just that interaction, one interaction at the water fountain from a coach was huge. And that's why I always tell coaches, don't just share a belief with the kids that are on your team in your school. Be able to share some of that belief in some other athletes, because really he made a biggest difference for me, and he never got a really chance to coach me, and I never got a chance to play for him.
So looking forward, what do you see for youth sports? What do you see is the number in your position at PCA? What do you think is the number one biggest threat to youth sports right now?
Oh, I think, I think trying to isolate on one threat is really hard. I think the biggest concern that I see, maybe not to sure what the threat or where the threat exactly comes from, but concern is less athletes playing sports, in general, whether it's football or anything. And I think PCA, what we've really been about for a long time is we want more kids playing sports at a great, early age. And we want them to play sports for as long as their abilities and their mind and things can take them, whatever their goals might be. But we know along that journey, when we have more kids playing sports for a longer time and getting to enjoy those dynamics and things we talked about on the podcast with their teammates and challenges and adversity, it readies them for life. And so I think sometimes in certain areas, making sure that from a PCA standpoint, we want to make sure that kids have equity and access to play and try and get to play sports. And then when they're out there playing sports, that it's a good experience. Because if we create opportunities and access for kids for sports, but it's a crappy experience, and we're not building their bodies and their mindsets the right way, we're not doing what we set out to do. And so I think the biggest threat is just the things that can slowly pull and erode at athletic departments, athletic culture, and youth sports. And there's a lot of competition with technology and the evolving world. But as I'm sure a lot of the other podcast guests know, and as we know, it's really hard to replace what a great coach, a great team, and a great sports experience can do for a young person.
So what do you think is let's drill down on this for just a second. What do you think? Is it coaches that are causing kids to not want to play? Is it parents? Is it money? What is it? Is it all the above? What are the forces that are pushing kids besides competition? Because yes, there's always been competition.
Yeah.
And back in my day, we played football and we played baseball, and then all of a sudden this little round ball comes into the thing called soccer. And we're going, what the hell's that? But there's always competition of something else.
Yeah.
But there is a force out there. Is it too much pressure? Are we expecting them to excel at a higher level than they're capable of? What is causing it? Or are we is it back to the afraid they're going to get hurt and we're just discouraging them to go away? What in your view is that force that's pushing?
Yeah, I think the consistent force that you see from surveying, research, and questioning kids and why they leave, the force is no fun. Now, you hit on all those different areas that might be the source of that lack of fun. Could be their own parents, right? Unfortunately, that creates a lot. Those are the stories that are hurt to hear as a coach and athletic administrator. And then, yeah, sometimes it's a poor coaching experience. And then sometimes, they don't have the funds to go have the fun, and there's a lot of great organizations that partner and are trying to close those gaps when it comes to equity and access and things. But, when kids leave, they're like, it's not fun anymore. And then it's like,
what about that loss of tenacity, that loss of grit, of setting a goal?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't achieve it, and then I'm just going to walk away. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, I think that's naturally what humans do, and I think it's our job as coaches and stuff to build. And I think that's what we call, the just right challenge. What is fun, but is challenging. And when kids have a challenge, they don't want to be bored, right? We know that. So what is that right stimulus in the right place for them, and the right drills for them to grow and be challenged and have it be competitively fun. But even adults, when we ask like, hey, we don't waste our time with stuff that's not fun. And so that's I think the art of a lot of coaching is, especially with different age groups, is how do you make grit? How do you make tackling, physical toughness, these things that the game require, competitive and fun? And I think the coaches that are able to steward a culture of hard work and fun get a lot more out of their teams and a lot more out of their kids than when it's just hard work, because we play the game for fun, and that's what gets us into it. And even the players at the top level, there's some fun that drives the hard work. And I think that's always the big thing is don't lose that element of it, because that's where kids, that's their natural energy. When you can tap into some fun, that's where they'll give you a little bit more grit. But us as coaches we've seen the evolution of athletes and the things that they're exposed to in different levels of encouragement from school, is to, I think, the big thing I always come back to is this game is a challenge. This is not an easy game. In recognizing that it's a game with high challenge, us as coaches, we need to bring high support. And so, what do we want to put kids into an environment? If it's a high challenge, low support, kids aren't going to want to stick around that environment. And so, it's our art and how we can help coaches figure out, what's that challenge, support, and how do we make it fun somehow? Because that fun will change as they go through the game. But if you can create that, you'll create kids that want to stick around and work hard.
I'm so glad you brought up fun, because football was fun. It was a blast. But I had a coach in here the other day. He was picking up a football, and he said to me, he said, one of the problems our team had last year was we were out of shape. We just didn't get in shape because I didn't really want to do sprints and do things other coaches were doing. He says, do you have any suggestions on how to get my kids in better shape? And I said, play games with them. He goes, what do you mean play games? I go, absolutely play games with them. Make a game, make an obstacle course, do a punt drill, make it fun, and let them compete against themselves. It's amazing what they will do competing against themselves, and they'll work harder, and they'll be a lot more tired at the end of the day and in a lot better shape for game time if you tap into that fun part of it.
Oh, 100%.
And
I think
it was like this light went on. He goes, I never even thought of that. Well, you've only coached a couple of years. When you coach 30 years, you figure them out. Oh, yeah, I've been the coach that's bear crawled. I've been the coach that's done up downs. I've been the coach. And you know what? I was far less effective than the coach that made, even at the ninth grade level. You put a challenge into it against each other. Oh, my goodness. You can't imagine what they will do to win.
Yeah.
And then at that level, you throw a little food or a little treat or something in there.
Yeah.
It's a motivation all unto itself.
Definitely. I think don't ever underestimate the use of the game of tag in a condensed space. You get a couple of guys in a condensed, grid and play some tag, but I think when you can intertwine the conditioning element so it doesn't become boring and repetitive for them either. You also get to see when they're playing tag what their competitive wiring is. You get to learn a little bit more about them when it's kind of a play conditioning versus a repetition conditioning. And there's a time and place for both, that you'll experience. But the other one we always love is you can bring a mental element as you play tic-tac-toe relays, right? You got a tic-tac-toe board 15, 10, 20 yards down there, and you got teams, and you got to stop, you got to think, you got to make some place, and you got to run. And so, you can make it things that have a little cognitive element that, again, like you talked about, we got to make decisions, and we got to make them fast in football. So,
but to your point, you also see their lateral movement, how they stop and they start, if you're full speed in one step versus full speed in 3 steps, you can see all that in those games.
Yeah.
And those kids are working hard, but not only that, but they're improving that fast twitch muscle fibers to that you just can't get if they're barely coming off the line to do a 10-10 or a 5-5.
Yeah, I think we all know it's like when you know what's coming, you start to pace yourself, and then the conditioning loses its point sometimes too. But it's when you got a kid chasing you, I think coaches D line, right, the big circles, figure 8 chases. So I love watching the D linemen chase each other around those rings. That's entertaining. I'll watch that all day.
And those dudes get competitive.
Oh yeah. I like that.
Tyler Johnson, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. This is valuable information for our coaches, for our parents, and for our players for that matter. So thank you again. Tyler Johnson with PCA. Go ahead. Tell us what PCA stands for.
The Positive Coaching Alliance.
Perfect. Coaches, Positive Coaching Alliance. It's about retaining players. It's about keeping kids in the game. We're not doing anybody any good by saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be playing." Now there are some kids that shouldn't be playing, but it shouldn't be us. Let the game itself determine that. Tyler Johnson, we thank you very much. I am Jeff Gorange. This is In the Trenches, and we love youth sports, especially youth football. We're out.